are carried off in a safe manner as well.
Thank you, Sheriff Schrader.
I'd like to first address the breaking news on this issue by saying that we are relieved that the threat to our schools and community is no longer present. And I want to express deep gratitude to our partners in law enforcement, especially the Jeffco Sheriff's Office, for your vigilance in serving as guardians for the community's children. I also want to thank the Jeffco Public Schools staff for your professionalism, your commitment, and exemplary performance during this ongoing difficult period of time. I'm proud of you, and I appreciate you. I'm also deeply grateful for the support of the Denver metro area superintendents and other state leaders. While Jeffco was the epicenter of this threat, it extended across the whole metro area and affected us all. While this threat has been the most significant, it's not the only challenge facing our schools and our community in these days leading up to the Columbine anniversary. I appreciate our community's patience as we continue to navigate these difficult issues, and I'm always inspired by this community's capacity, resilience and capacity for good in the face of unimaginable evil. Looking ahead, we're planning on returning to normal school operations tomorrow with heightened safety and security procedures and ongoing vigilance in the days to come. And the other events that were planned this weekend will continue as planned. Thank you, and I want to now turn things over to our Executive Director of School Safety and Security, John McDonald.
Thank you, Dr. Glass and Sheriff Schrader. The shadow of Columbine looms pretty large here in Jeffco, as it does across the state and the country. For us, the partnership that we have with the Sheriff's Office is something pretty special. There are a lot of lessons learned in 1999. Probably the biggest lesson was breaking down the silos and the ability to train together, to work together, to constantly communicate, to keep our 86,000 kids safe across this district is a foundational aspect of what we do. And when this threat came in, we are used to threats, frankly, at Columbine. This one felt different, it was different, and it certainly had our attention. We base our decisions based on the best intel we have at the time. And to close an entire metro area is not an easy decision, but at the end of the day, it's the right decision, the best decision to protect all of our kids. And to me, that's pretty important. It's critically important to everything that we do. A student that doesn't feel safe in school is not a well-educated student. They can't focus, they can't study, and they can't take that test. So we're blessed in Jeffco, frankly, to have support from 7 different law enforcement agencies that provide us school resource officers that are helping us protect our kids each and every day. I'm very thankful that this threat is over and we can get back to the business of learning. But we know that Columbine continues to attract people from around the world. And if I have any message, we're not a place to come visit if you're not a student. If you don't have business there, we're not a tourist attraction, and we're not a place for you to come and gain inspiration. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. And now we'll open it up to questions. Yes, right here.
Can you describe circumstances surrounding the death of Ms. Pais? Were agents actively involved in pursuing her at the time when she took her own life?
I don't have that information, but I believe she was found on a search. But again, the FBI will be doing a more comprehensive briefing. They're currently processing the scene where her body was found to determine all of the factors that would lead to those conclusions. I don't know if she was, I don't believe that they were in active pursuit at the time that she was found dead, but again, they'll confirm that and the details surrounding it.
Sheriff, do you believe that there could be any persons associated with her? Is that a concern? And what is your involvement with the investigation right now?
Well, we've had staff on the Rocky Mountain Safe Streets Task Force that have been actively involved. We have had people in the command post during the course of the last 24 hours to aid in that investigation. We've had plenty of staff that have been boots on the ground searching different areas. Everything that I've heard in briefings does not indicate that she had any assistants or friends in the area, just a fascination with the Columbine area and the horrendous crime that went on there 20 years ago.
And I know you had said that this threat felt different. She did purchase a gun in Colorado. How did that play into this?
Well, for me, looking at school shooters and the history of what we've seen for the last 20 years, there's some real indicators that we look at. The fact that she was committed, purchased a plane ticket, not only purchased a plane ticket, but made that journey, that pilgrimage to Columbine. Once she got into our area, purchased a gun. Now, I say made the pilgrimage. I don't believe she ever made it onto Columbine property. I don't think that's ever been confirmed, but there was a pilgrimage here. And certainly she purchased a weapon, and those two things combined, along with her fascination of Columbine, that's pretty clear and convincing evidence that we have a threat to the school.
Can you please speak louder? It's harder to hear you. Thank you.
I'm not going to reveal the gun shop, but it was in the Littleton area, not too terribly far from Columbine.
How do you know she was infatuated with the Columbine?
The reports that have been in briefings have indicated that she had made statements to friends, family, and some online type postings or communications.
And before we take other questions, I also want to introduce Frank DeAngelis, who's the former principal of Columbine High School, who is here to answer any questions around connections to the historical Columbine events and then events related to the memorial this weekend.
So can you talk about the fact that she is only one person, and granted that she did have a gun, but how was she able, as just one person, to generate so much concern and affect such a wide area, even though she had intent and means, only one person versus a department? How can you talk about the logistics of heightening up the awareness for that?
Well, I will say this, that we base all of our decisions on the intel that we have at the time. So from our perspective, the information that came into us, we made a decision based on what we needed to do at Columbine. And then that extends to other areas within the Columbine articulation area to protect those immediate schools. Based on then further information that we were provided by law enforcement, we made decisions to place some of the mountain schools on lockout as well. So all of those decisions are not done in a vacuum or in a silo. It is constant communication back and forth, looking at what that threat is and having decision makers together. And we had good partners, mission partners that were looking at our entire school safety program and from the school district. Now that extended out metro-wide when we were advised that the threat was not as specific to Columbine. However, in my mind, the fascination with Columbine, where she purchased the weapon, the fact that she made the journey here, for me, it's all about protecting our environment, our schools. That's how we made that decision.
Yes, over here. Thank you.
Gun legal, and also, if she were still alive, what could law enforcement do in terms of containing the situation? Could she have been charged with something, or is law enforcement hands kind of tied in this type of situation?
Well, I don't believe our hands were tied in this type of a situation. Obviously, communication was ongoing. Do I know what charges could necessarily have applied in this case? No, not without additional information. And there were prosecutors as well as many law enforcement officers involved in that communication. Minimally, based on the information that we had, she certainly would have been subject to being taken into custody for a mental health hold, a 72-hour hold and treat to determine a little bit more about the mental state and what risk there would have been posed. But minimally, that would have happened. Certainly, there was the potential for other charges, but absent additional information, I wouldn't be able to comment on what those would be.
Yes, over there, our person from the Post. Thank you.
In addition to the additional security tomorrow, do you anticipate there's going to be any need for additional mental health support or counseling?
Yes, after events like this, we typically deploy additional mental health support, counseling, make that available to our staff, our students, our families. Regrettably, this is not the only time situations like this have happened in Jeffco and in schools across the country. So it's a sad statement that we're becoming more used to handling situations like this, but we expect that there will be some grief and processing mental issues to contend with tomorrow.
Thank you. Back there.
Yeah, we will not disclose what exactly that looks like, but it will involve processes and procedures at buildings regarding entrance into schools, operations of the school during the day, release of students at the end of the day, additional patrols using camera systems. So without going into details that might reveal our systems of support, it's those sorts of things. And, John may want.
You will, students will see, as they typically do. We are all over schools all day long, so they're very used to seeing us, and they'll continue to see us, and they'll see additional patrols in the near future.
Thank you. Over there.
And, this question is for Frank. I know this is already an emotional, a difficult week, and for you, for families, when did you first learn about this? What did you think? I know you still have a relationship with these families. Have you talked with them? What are they thinking right now?
Yesterday, I was at Columbine High School when we went into lockout, and first thing I did is check in on about the 15 staff members who were there when the event happened 20 years ago, and then some families start reaching out to me and just to provide support for everyone. And, it's very important that we continue to look at what happened 20 years ago, but at the same time not let it detract from what we're hoping to do this week. And the support was so great when Jeffco got together, everybody came together and there was a confidence that was what we were working with, but it just takes us back. And I think you talk to most people that were part of Columbine High School, when that month of April comes, it does something to us all. But we have the support system in place, and we take care of each other. And, we have that famous saying, we are Columbine, and during times like this, it resonates loudly and clearly.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Could you talk personally for you, what you personally felt and thought when you heard about this, and your message to parents out there in the community impact?
The one thing that is so different from this time as opposed to 20 years ago is all the things that we have in place. Prior to that time, the only drills we did were fire drills. And yesterday, as soon as there was an alert to go in lockdown, Columbine High School acted so professionally. And the reason they did this is because of the training being done by the Jeffco Sheriff's Department and John's office. And so it was like clockwork. And I was there through the entire time, and the kids knew exactly what to do. There was support, and so that is much more reassuring than where we were 20 years ago. And so I think we know we have things in place now, lessons learned, and the support system is there. And so, again, we reach out to everyone, and the Jeffco schools have been fantastic, and Dr. Glass and his leadership has been fantastic, providing everything we've needed for Columbine as this 20-year remembrance approaches.
And Sheriff, I did just want to ask you the question about, was the gun purchased legally? And can you kind of explain the laws? A lot of people are asking, how she would be able to purchase a shotgun here in Colorado.
Yeah, the things that I've been briefed on, all appearances are that the firearm was purchased legally. I'm sure that there will be some ongoing evaluation in that regard by federal law enforcement officers, perhaps with the ATF, but every appearance is that it was purchased legally. One of the requirements when somebody purchases a gun or obtains a concealed handgun permit in the state of Colorado is that their fingerprints, that information is run through the Colorado InstaCheck program. And so that would be a requirement and provide the gun seller the legal right to sell that gun to an individual based on the information that they have there.
And could someone from the school speak to what the lead time was maybe when you found out about this potential threat and the seriousness of it and when action was taken?
I received a call from law enforcement, and as soon as I had that call from task force agent that placed it, I immediately called our school resource officer at Columbine, and we began within a minute of taking action and making decisions.
Can you describe the process with the other districts in the metro area? I've been here a long time. This is unprecedented to have hundreds of thousands of children affected.
Right.
Describe that process.
The Denver metro area superintendents coordinated closely on this. Of course, Jeffco was the epicenter of the threat, but as it was determined the threat wasn't specific to any one school, and we knew she was present in the metro area and clearly had developed means to move around from the airport into Littleton up to the foothills and the mountains. There was a concern that any of our schools could be targets until the situation was resolved. So we worked closely with law enforcement, the FBI, state law enforcement. The governor's office was involved. There were a lot of conversations, and collectively we stood together and made the decision to close all of the schools in the metro area today because of the threat couldn't be determined. We did begin thinking about if this were to continue, then what? So what would we be doing tomorrow and the next day, and how would we adapt as school leaders and as our school systems to meet this new challenge? So that work was happening as of half an hour ago. We were still working on what that would look like in the face of this new threat, and I believe that this may not be the first time we see something like this. These things, we see copycat versions of threats and actions more commonly, and so we are developing systems and procedures on how we will react to situations like this in the future. We don't know. We were working on what changes to what school looks like would have to happen for us to be open. We did not wish to have one person hold all of the schools in the Front Range or the whole state hostage. We wanted to have a reaction to that to allow learning and our children's development to happen. So it would have required different transportation procedures, different processes for kids coming into schools, locking systems, patrols, food service. I mean, it's complex, the amount of changes that would need to happen, but we were working that problem and thinking about how do we change what school looks like on a normal day to how school looks like under this threat. And we fortunately didn't have to execute that, but we've saved it all because we may have to come back to it at some point. I think it may be helpful to not only Jeffco Public Schools, but other school leaders in the state or perhaps the country that may face this situation in the future.
Between 1999 and 2018, Colorado has experienced 8 school shootings. I think each of those school shootings that have occurred, we've learned a lot of lessons, and we're paying attention to what's happening around the country. So decisions that are made today are not decisions that we would have made in the past, and that's part of the learning. It's part of the training that we do each and every day. And in schools, we plan for 2 types of threats. We plan for the insider threat, potential student, and we plan for the outsider threat. So the practices, protocols, and programs that we have in place for the outsider threat came into play yesterday.
You know,
We have time for one more question.
How did you become aware of her presence here in Colorado?
Well, the FBI developed information. It came forward from the Miami FBI office to the Colorado FBI office, I believe after she was reported missing by her parents. And again, the FBI will, in all likelihood, be conducting a more thorough briefing, media briefing on the details of their case, and they probably would be better equipped to answer that. But if I could get back to the question that you asked, one of the goals of public safety is not only to reduce crime, but to reduce the fear of crime. I had the opportunity to listen in on the superintendent's calls last night and today, and the thoughtful deliberation that went on throughout the Denver Metro school superintendents. That was a large piece of it. Are kids going to be fearful? Are their parents going to be concerned with their kids? And ultimately, is that a good learning environment? But that's the thing that we work on hard every day, is to make sure that with our school safety partners to make sure that the schools are safe and that kids are in an environment where they feel comfortable so that they can learn their very best.
How did she get around Jeffco? What was the why?
I'm sure it will come out in the FBI briefing, but it was an Uber type of a system, I believe.
Okay. I think that wraps it up for us today. Thank you all for coming. We appreciate it. On behalf of Jeffco Public Schools, we are eternally grateful to our partners in our community who helped bring this to conclusion. And we appreciate your time and attention today. Thank you.